Oh god, I haven't been here in a very long time. Oh god. Right, okay. Well, welcome everyone to the actual YouTube channel that has not been touched in oh god, yeah, that long. Speaking of things that haven't been touched in ages, Iceberg videos. I've been wanting to make one for a very long time, but as you can tell from my upload rate, it's not exactly going to be happening anytime soon. But I have made my own personal one about movies that were never made but were in production or along those lines. So I have the first third ready, and there'll be hopefully two more parts for this then for the rest of the Iceberg. So hope this goes well, and apologies as this is a new mic, so I know it's going to sound a little bit different in between the videos, but hopefully by next video that shouldn't be an issue. Kubrick's Napoleon. Claimed as one of the best movies never made, Stanley Kubrick's Napoleon would have been an epic biopic about the French military leader Napoleon Bonaparte. After the success of 2001: Space Odyssey, Kubrick had started production with plans of filming a 50,000-man army replicating the Battle of Waterloo. The movie was cancelled, however, due to not having enough funding from the studio, and so the movie was scrapped. However, it may have gone on to inspire Kubrick's next period piece, Barry Lyndon. With Kubrick's death, it's unlikely that we'll ever get to see this film in any capacity. However, you are able to see the original script online. Hitchcock's Kaleidoscope. Kaleidoscope, or otherwise known as Frenzy, was a film planning to be made in the 1960s, with it being a prequel to another Hitchcock film, Shadow of a Doubt. The story, inspired by the serial killers Neville Heath and John George Haig, would have been one of Hitchcock's most risque films for its time, with Hitchcock feeling pressure from his recent failures and from the movies coming from the European directors at the time. The movie was never made, however, due to studio interference, with them not wanting to give funding to such a project. However, clips can be seen online, with footage from the movie being used in two separate Hitchcock documentaries. Verhoeven's Crusade. At the peak of his career, Paul Verhoeven had an idea for a medieval epic starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, with a script written and multiple cast members announced. A common theme with most of these productions is the plan had gone through due to a budget issue with the studio. In this case, the studio had wanted an estimate budget of $100 million. However, Verhoeven couldn't promise that the epic wouldn't exceed that budget, so they had cancelled the project. Ironically, after the studio rejected Crusade, they decided to fund another epic instead, Cutthroat Island, otherwise known as the biggest bomb in film history. Jodorowsky's Dune. The most famous movie never made, Jodorowsky's Dune, has been covered a lot, so I'll make this one short. Jodorowsky's Dune would have been a 10-hour-long epic, with the script being described to be the size of a phone book. With the studio not interested in something they feel would fail, Jodorowsky abandoned the project. For more information on the film, there is a documentary available on the subject, called Jodorowsky's Dune. However, there have been other adaptations of Frank Herbert's Dune, with Lynch's adaptation being known as a failure by everyone, including Lynch, and we'll have to see how Denis Villeneuve's take on the epic will be this year. Terry Gilliam's The Man Who Killed Don Quixote. Similar to Dune, Terry Gilliam's Man Who Killed Don Quixote would have been one of the most well-known movies never made, having its own documentary made of its failure, Lost in La Mancha. However, in 2018, The Man Who Killed Don Quixote was released. After Gilliam's second attempt of making the film, it was finally successful in having a change of cast from Johnny Depp and Jean Rochefort to Adam Driver and Michael Palin. Jerry Lewis's The Day the Clown Cried. The Day the Clown Cried was a film written, directed and starred American comedic actor Jerry Lewis. The film was about a German clown during World War II, having been sent to a concentration camp after drunkenly defaming Hitler. He is then used as a clown to lure children onto the trains to Auschwitz. The film was made but incomplete, with everyone involved in the making of the film wanting it never to be released, as with the only short few people who have seen it saying it was wrong. It's unlikely this film will ever be released, as Jerry Lewis and his estate have locked it away in a vault only to be opened years from now. All American Massacre. All American Massacre is an unofficial sequel/prequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, following the character of Chop Top, starring actor Bill Moseley. The idea came about from the director of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre's son, William Tony Hooper. With Tony wanting to get into the film industry, he and Bill Moseley came up with the idea of All-American Massacre. The film would have been about Chop Top, having survived the end of part 2, would now be in prison and interviewed by the tabloids, leading the Chop Top's backstory. The film has been left unfinished in the hands of Tony Hooper with an unknown release date. For anyone interested in the project, there is a trailer released, but that is all the available footage online. David Lynch's Ronnie Rocket. After Eraserhead, David Lynch's next project was going to be a film called Ronnie Rocket, inspired by his love of 50s Americana. The film fell into a legal limbo, with the film going to be made with Zoetrope Studios before it went bankrupt. Lynch still has interest in the film and still plans on making it with the cast in mind. However, when this will be made is unknown, and not much else is known about the project. Steven Spielberg's Night Skies. Night Skies was an original idea for a horror sequel to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which inevitably became E.T. After the success of Close Encounters, Columbia Pictures wanted a sequel. However, Spielberg had no interest in making one, but he also did not want them to make a sequel without him, very much like how Universal Pictures had done with Jaws. With that, Spielberg started to write a horror sequel about an alien invasion. Although, with the movie going into production, Spielberg at the time was surrounded by horror and action, having produced both Poltergeist and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and so he decided to rewrite the script into something more family-friendly, creating E.T., Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis. Coppola has wanted to make this movie since the 80s, with the story being set in New York about an architect wanting to change New York into a new utopia. However, the mayor has other plans. The film was the closest to being made in the early 2000s, with 30 minutes of test footage being filmed. However, the production had stopped after the 9/11 attack. The film has been at a standstill ever since, and with very little information available, we do not know when this film will be picked up again. George Miller's Justice League. This one is more of an interesting one, as plans had gone fully through for the project. George Miller's Justice League Mortal was days away from filming when it had just stopped. The film had a full cast and production set with images of the cast together and costumes being made, but they ran into an unfortunate issue. With filming being set in Australia around the time of a new legislation with a tax rebate, meaning the government had to decide to let Justice League be filmed or not, which unfortunately it was denied. Then not long after that, a writer's strike began and the film just fell through and was never made. James Cameron's Spider-Man. Before Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies, James Cameron had made plans for his own Spider-Man starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Kevin Spacey. However, with issues with who owned the rights to Spider-Man, as Marvel had sold the rights years before, an agreement was never reached and so the film was never made. The only thing left of the film was some elements of the script, which were then put into Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Tim Burton's Superman Lives. Superman Lives was in a similar situation to Justice League, with after many rewrites of the script, the final, written by Kevin Smith, the film had begun production with wardrobe tests showing Nicolas Cage as the titular character Superman. The film failed due to studio interference, as they didn't want to risk money on a darker Superman movie based on the Death of Superman comic, and so it was cancelled. Like Dune, there is a documentary about Superman Lives, so if you want to learn more about it, go watch The Death of Superman Lives. Michael Jackson's Spider-Man movie. This one was more of an interesting story than a project itself. In 1996, Marvel filed for bankruptcy and sold most of its properties. After this, Michael Jackson had reached out to Stan Lee personally to purchase the properties back, with the proposition of Michael Jackson making the first Spider-Man movie and possibly starring as the character. However, similar with James Cameron, there were rights issues with who owned Spider-Man, and so the project had never been picked up. The never-released Fantastic Four movie. Speaking of bankrupt Marvel, the rights to the Fantastic Four were sold away to a company wanted to make a film for really cheap, so they had hired the first person they thought of, Robert Corman. The movie was filmed and edited and ready to be shown to the public, with there even being press coverage at Comic-Con. However, Fox had their own plans for a Fantastic Four movie and paid off the company and Robert Corman's production company to never show the film, and so it was never released. However, years later, a version of the film was leaked online. However, it's not the official version, with much of the production issues still being in there. Batman Year One, Darren Aronofsky. With the previous Batman movie failing so poorly, Warner Brothers wanted to reinvent Batman by hiring Darren Aronofsky and Frank Miller to write the script. The film would have been based off the Year One comic and would have been a much darker take on The Dark Knight. The production fell through due to creative differences, with Aronofsky wanting a more adult Batman compared to the previous movies and cartoons. However, the studio didn't want this, and so they looked elsewhere, leading to Nolan's Batman Begins.